It may not look like it, but this is a wireless gaming mouse. It's called the Ragnarok 2, and as you can probably tell, it's shaped like the handle of a gun. The team at Ragnarok were kind enough to send this one out to me, but it has no bearings on my conclusions. When I first heard about this mouse, my initial reactions were of intrigue into the novelty of the idea, but then also a curiosity about what this means for your aiming mechanics. The most striking difference is the vertical grip. On a standard mouse, our wrist can move left and right in a relatively small range of motion, but as soon as you grip vertically, that range of motion jumps from 70 or so degrees to nearly 180. Our wrist is also much better and stronger at moving this way. The obvious trade-off is losing the precision of our fingers, and for aimers like me, losing that palm contact with the mouse pad. You technically can have that palm contact if you don't use the base plate, but without it, the mouse doesn't have enough surface area and tilts left and right as you aim, so it's not really an option. When I first set it up, I was using it to edit another video, and I was impressed with how intuitive it felt to left and right click and even scroll around. Before actually playing anything, I was expecting this mouse to be a novelty, designed primarily for immersion or even ergonomics, mostly because of how radically different it is to standard mice, but also because of the gameplay footage I had seen so far with it. They seem to have recently removed the video I had in mind, but Ragnarok had a video up from a few years ago of someone using it in Apex and they couldn't hit a shot, and this was the footage that made the cut. There are a few other gameplay examples they have, and from another review I watched, but it's very sparse and it didn't instill me with confidence. Nonetheless, it was time to try it for myself, and as someone that cares a bit too much about aim, I was determined to make it work. First step was to jump into the Apex firing range to mess around and see if I needed to change any settings. Surprisingly, my aim felt just fine, at least for these easy targets. This is my first footage of using the mouse right after jumping in. I know I talk about it a lot, but Ragnarok, if you're watching this, please lower your mouse sensitivity. Your promo footage will thank you. As far as settings go, I swapped from toggle ADS to hold, which felt much better for this shape. I also slightly lowered my mouse sensitivity, whether that's because it benefits from the larger range of motion, or just because lower sensitivity can be a band-aid for learning something new and unusual, I don't quite know yet. Strangely, I couldn't get a game in any mode to pop in Apex at 5:30 PM, so I popped over to Overwatch to try the mouse out against actual players. The very first shots I fired weren't bad, but you can see I'm not used to the large swipes yet and faceplant the wall. The aim on the Symmetra was a little awkward, but I couldn't complain with the headshots. I'll play some footage from the first couple of hours with it and share my thoughts. Immediately, it was apparent that tracking, at least in a straight line, felt great. With the stronger and better wrist movement, this type of aim felt both comfortable and easy to do. On the other hand, quicker tracking adjustments, like against AD strafing targets, were definitely much more difficult than I was accustomed to. I don't think it's an insurmountable problem, but at least in the first session, I found this style of aim to be the most challenging. I'm under the impression that this mostly comes down to having my palm off the mousepad, so I don't have as much control over my stopping power, which made aiming feel more floaty and slick. I didn't change anything about this in the first session, but I really got the feeling that my vertical sensitivity was too fast. Aiming on the horizontal plane felt totally fine. Aiming vertically or even tracking jumping targets had me consistently over-aiming. I've always used the same X and Y sensitivity with traditional mice, but for this vertical gun shape, I'll be experimenting with a slower Y in the future to see if that helps. So what about flicking? This was the type of aiming I was most apprehensive about. Losing the fingers and the stopping power of having your palm on the pad seemed like a steep trade-off. Much to my surprise, it once again felt better than expected. So long as I was deliberate and separated each shot into its own movement, the accuracy and even headshot accuracy wasn't bad at all. It may start to run into some trouble with semi-automatic weapons that have a faster fire rate. I was able to sustain some decent accuracy, but only with very deliberate aim. Quickly flicking in succession probably won't do so well, at least with the current design of the base. Larger swipes were certainly more difficult at first. I was often finding myself falling short of the intended area, particularly when aiming to the right. This likely comes down to a combination of a few different things. Firstly, the mouse sensor is quite close to your wrist, so we have good control within our range of motion, but it doesn't actually move the crosshair that far. When your sensor is positioned further forward, the same movement would move your crosshair further, so it feels faster. The way the sensor is set up on the Ragnarok isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's very different to what I've used before, so I just need to adjust to it to swipe the correct distance. The other variable is more personal. For whatever reason, my wrist mobility to the left is quite good, but to the right is fairly restricted. This means any large swipe or flick to the right falls short of what I can do when aiming to the left. The way you grip this mouse is very important, as the slightest change can have a dramatic effect on the orientation of your mouse sensor. For example, if I fully grip it in my palm, the sensor is now facing off in this direction, which makes my aim look like this. Fortunately, it's comfortable to hold with the sensor facing directly forwards. You just have to find the grip and be able to consistently grip it the same way. Slight deviations to the way you hold it can seriously throw off your aim. Functionally, the triggers work just fine, even for precise timing like a flick shot, though I can't help but think they could work better. They feel a little flimsy and have some wobble, and require very little effort to actuate. This can make right-clicking for your ADS tricky. In times when you don't want to ADS, you have to consciously hold off the right click, or you can accidentally click. This can make the grip feel unsteady, as you're really only holding the mouse with these two fingers and your thumb. If it required a little more force to actuate, you could rest your fingers on the triggers without accidentally clicking. The scroll wheel works well and is in a good position. My gripe with it is that the plastic housing is the same height, so when you're scrolling you have to slide against it. If the scroll wheel was protruding out just a little further, it would feel much more comfortable to use. The mouse comes with a recoil vibration feature, which is even advertised on the box. I understand that my angle is focusing on the aiming performance and not so much the immersion, yet even still, this feature seems undercooked to me. Unless it was synced to your game and applied the vibration appropriately to every shot, it doesn't seem worthwhile. For example, when firing an automatic weapon, it will buzz for a second or so, stop, then buzz again. It doesn't feel immersive in my opinion, and I'd rather they simply save the weight and not include it. For reference, this thing weighs 115 grams with the base attached, and 94 grams without it. By modern mice standards, it's a brick, though I can tell you now that it doesn't feel nearly that heavy. The vertical shape and the stronger grip it provides makes it feel lighter in your hand. That being said, to truly optimize it for FPS gaming, it would be beneficial to lower that weight as much as possible. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with a receiver extension adapter, so if your tower is a long way from your mousepad, you could run into some problems with its responsiveness or having it cut out. I have the extension for my G303 on the desk and was able to plug the Ragnarok receiver in just fine, so if you happen to have one already, it's not an issue. The price is quite reasonable at $69 with free shipping, particularly for a wireless mouse. If you were thinking of picking one up, I have a referral link pinned below that you can use. Overall, I don't think this mouse will perform better for aiming when compared to popular modern gaming mice. That being said, the gap between the Ragnarok and other mice is much closer than I anticipated. I've also been using normal mice my entire life and a vertical mouse for a few days, so perhaps there is more performance to be found over a longer timeline. It is a lot of fun to use and it feels great in the hand. From an FPS aiming perspective, there are a few things that I would personally change to improve its performance. To solve the problem of reduced precision and micro adjustments, I would have the base flare out to the left side only, so your palm and even your pinky finger can be in contact with the mousepad. I understand that this tarnishes the idea of it being a gun mouse, but purely for performance, I'd have it angled a little to the left, rather than being completely vertical. This feels more comfortable and would help put your hand's weight over the base that is now exclusively on the left side. And of course, lowering the weight, and improving mouse 1 and 2 with firmer triggers that require more force to actuate. And there we have it, a gun mouse. If you're looking to have some fun, challenge yourself, have wrist issues, or perhaps you're the one who will forge the vertical mouse aiming meta, I can recommend giving this mouse a go. If you would like to support the channel, there is a referral link pinned below. Thanks so much for watching, be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.